if any question bounces around in your mind today, this is the one I want. Body and blood, bread and wine. What if something much bigger than you expected is happening here? What if something much bigger than you expected is happening here? I had a very good friend out in New Jersey, Casey Kegley. He's a pastor up in Valparaiso, Indiana. But we were out in New Jersey together, and we would go to what you call an ordination, an installation of pastors. What happens is, like, in the afternoon, you would kind of do worship in your morning, and then you'd show up to some other church, and there would be someone who was called to be a pastor in a congregation. And what happens as a part of that is the church sets aside someone for a special purpose. We set aside a pastor who does the sacraments, who shares the word with you, who offers you forgiveness of sins. But a part of that is this funny ritual. It's a ritual that, if I'm honest, I think it belongs more in a frat house basement than the front of a church. What happens is all these pastors in an unair-conditioned room wearing sweaty wool robes come together, and we all try to put our hand on the person being ordained and installed. And this was like post-COVID a little bit, but I was still nervous enough. And I'm supposed to come forward with 15 other pastors, and we're all kind of fighting to get our hand on this guy. And I'm feeling like people's warm bodies in an unair-conditioned room, and it's gross. And I'm thinking about getting my hand in there, and instead I just kind of keep my hand here to make it look like maybe I'm touching him. But really, I'm not. Well, the ceremony goes on, and I'll be honest, it can be weird to outsiders. And after the whole kind of time of worship, I get in the car with my friend Casey I drove there with, and I said, yeah, man, it was just hot in there. I feel gross. I feel sticky. I didn't quite get my hand on the person. But why would it matter anyway? And Casey just looked at me, deadpan, and said, what if it did matter? And I was uncomfortable, and I said, spooky. Right? Like, as if there was some power in me that had to come out of my hand onto the person, right? Spooky, right? What if it did matter? What if God was doing something more in that moment? And you know, I deal really well with God when he works in like the ordinary. I'm good at reading books, I'm good at looking at formulas, but then all of a sudden you hear across the world things like God doing miracles, and there's these massive displays of the power of God, and all of a sudden I don't quite have control of him, right? Because what if God is doing something much bigger? Well, I want to put to you today that God is doing something much bigger here in this meal. This meal, where you have bad bread and lukewarm wine, is actually something much bigger than you ever expected. It's actually bigger than the moment in about 15-20 minutes on January 29th, 2023. No, this moment actually connects your life back to a much bigger moment. This moment where you have bread and wine, body and blood, connects your life to the life of Jesus. Somehow your life now in 2023 is connected to Jesus' life some 2,000 years prior. And in this community, we talk about it as a pipeline. Now, I don't know if you know this about St. Louis, but Anheuser-Busch decided it was cheaper if they filtered all of our water, right? And so they have some water filtration station somewhere, right, where they grab water, I'm guessing out of a river. I don't know. If it comes out of the Mississippi, it's really dirty right here, so maybe further up, right? But there is a water source, a water treatment station, and then somehow a network of pipes going all the way through to your sink, so that when you want a glass of water, you turn it on and it shows up. And it only gets there because there's a pipeline. There's a connection from where you are to where the water is finally being taken out of its source. In this meal, your life is connected to Jesus' life. Everything Jesus said back here now becomes true for you over there. He said, "This is my body given and shed for you." Make no mistake, you were worth dying for. From a cross, from a moment, he says, "Father, forgive them." And you end up forgiven. All because there's a meal that connects your life to his life some 2,000 years prior. In this meal, our relationship with God the Father is repaired. But there's something spooky going on in the meal yet. There's something going on even from us, one to another. I've seen this expressed in beautiful ways. When I was in a previous congregation, there was a woman who was in her 90s who would come up for the sacrament. And she would come up just like everybody else, and she'd come up to the railing. And I was so nervous that there was going to be a Sunday she came up, knelt down at the railing, and her knees were not going to get back up. She'd come forward and she'd be unstable, hobble back and forth, and someone finally came to me and said, "Pastor, you have got to let her know that this still counts if she's in her seat. She doesn't have to come forward, right?" Well, I went to her and I kind of talked through it, and I was trying to be gentle, and she just said, in her stubborn and yet faithful, beautiful way, "I've got to be with the people. I've got to be with the people." I think she knew that something more was going on here. Terry took me to go see Ann Vinson yesterday. Some of you remember Ann at all? If you didn't get to meet her, I feel so bummed, but she used to sit there, and she was this grandmotherly, motherly figure that even if you didn't pay her mind, somehow you felt like she cared about you. She's in her 90s. She's kind of shut into her apartment. But we got to be with her, and there was something amazing about offering her communion because it connected her back to a moment. Her memory isn't all there, but something jogged. Something was shaken out. Somehow I think she even remembered all of you. Maybe there's something more going on in this meal than you expected. Well, the Apostle Paul wrote letters to churches, and he knew that there was something more going on as well. He knew because over this meal there actually became quite a bit of conflict and dysfunction. He wrote a letter actually to a church in a city called Corinth, and it seems that the city of Corinth was pretty high on themselves. There were the high status, the elites, and then there were the have-nots, those who didn't have a lot of money. And it seems that when the church would come together, the people who had everything and were top elite status, they would use the Lord's Supper as a time to have an amazing meal, overeat, be gluttonous, even get drunk. But then the people who sometimes would go without would say, "What's going on? Are we even together on this?" Paul knew there was something more going on in this meal. He called them not to appeal to who they were and their status and their power. He called them to look at the night that Jesus was betrayed, when he first gave us this meal. He says that there's something more going on here. That if you actually have broken relationship with other people around you, he said, there's a reason why some of you are getting sick and even dying. Spooky, right? If there's something more going on here, what should we do? Today, I want you to take a look at one another as we celebrate this meal. I want you to know that you're not alone in taking it. Sometimes when I eat a meal, it's like a Taco Bell burrito in my car, just one alone, right? Kind of eat it shamefully because it's like $2 and that's fine. But I'm not convinced that this is the burrito in my car in a parking lot. I think it's a feast. I think it requires people. It requires all of you together. And so I don't think that anyone would flash their wealth or think higher than one another, but here's what you do need to know. You're different from one another. You vote differently. You think differently. No, you trust in Jesus, don't get me wrong. But there's something different about all of us together. It's not often that people in their 20s hang out with people in their 50s, right? But in this meal, something more is going on. And God is actually connecting us to one another in some deeper way that I don't know if we can totally explain. So here's what we're going to do today. We're going to slow down for the sacrament. Oftentimes, I know it's the worst way to describe it, drive-through communion, right? We're going to come together as tables. I'll have Josh excuse you between groups of 8 to 10. Step forward, make a line across to distribute body and blood, bread and wine. And yes, you'll be looking here, but know that you're not alone. You're not alone in believing, and that Jesus continues to work connecting you back to his life in this moment, even now.